Alright, so today we're talking about a trigger warning. So trigger warning, this is going to discuss a trigger warning. So if you're easily triggered, step off of this video right now. Anyway, so yeah, this was a requested topic that I talk about. Like, what is my opinion on trigger warnings? Do they do more harm than a good? So, this is an interesting one because trigger warnings, for the most part, I would say they really don't do much of anything. You know, I think they can inform some people because here's the whole thing. You know, I think I've put a trigger warning on one of my two of my videos or something at one point. You know, I'm not going to do that anymore. But other people, like, sometimes there's been a video that I've put out or something, and someone has said you should have put a trigger warning before this. Okay, so here is the thing about these trigger warnings and everything. So I think if you were, someone like me who was very traumatized when they were younger, okay? Trauma will, PTSD is a condition in which you have flashbacks to the trauma when you have memories and thoughts of an incident that happened, okay? So if you were heavily abused by, a family member or, things along those lines, then there could be certain conditioning that they put within you that whenever you see something or you hear something or, whatever else, it reminds you of that past experience and it triggers that same exact feeling that you had, when you were younger and you were in that sort of a situation. Okay. So the thing is, if you are someone like that who is very easily triggered in that sort of way, probably a good thing to do is to not consume things that are going to trigger you. Okay, so I understand that my videos have been very helpful to a lot of people, that people have watched them and, have been able to overcome some of the problems, but there also can be very triggering to some people with these conditions. So you really have to approach at your own risk, okay? I'm not going to give any sort of trigger warning because the title itself and the content itself should already show that it is a subject matter that will be very sensitive to some people. So if I put out a video, talking about, a death of you're a family member, like how to deal with the death of, your parents or your grandparents or, someone close to you, a friend, a family member, whatever else. That in itself could be very triggering to someone, and there's no need to put a trigger warning on that because just by the title alone, they're going to realize this is going to get into some deep stuff here, and it's going to bring up some emotion. Even just the title itself is going to bring up some emotions. Okay, so even if it wasn't that sort of title, I think what we all should do, if you do have PTSD and you do have these flashbacks that are coming up, this is something that you need to, get some, therapy to be able to help deal with these problems, because trauma does affect you on a very deep level to the point where you're not thinking from the most rational standpoint. You're thinking from a more traumatized type of standpoint here that has dealt with a lot of abuse and a lot of situations that are very, very negative and harmful. So what you have to be able to do then is find some sort of way to be able to tackle those so you are a lot less triggered by that. Now, I think it is the therapist's, job to, speak with you appropriately, to get out some of these feelings that you are, certainly a very sensitive subject matter. Like, when I talked to my therapist, for example, initially it was like a brick wall that was put up. It was very, very hard for me to say pretty much anything. But over some time, I was able to actually communicate. And I think a good therapist is not going to pressure you to share anything. It's everyone that I always talk to, it's always just like, you're free to share whatever you wish to share. You don't have to share anything if you don't want to, because that could be uncomfortable for you to share. And over time, you're going to be able to become more and more comfortable to be able to share some of these things. So that is what a good therapist would do. They would listen, and they would not try to, trigger any sort of negative emotions. They would help you deal with that. But once you start talking about it, it all comes back. It all comes up. And that's what a lot of people are scared about. But also, I don't think people in your day-to-day life, they're not going to be able to, or they shouldn't really have to worry about, triggering or upsetting you. I mean, if they're doing something deliberately, bringing up some bad memories, then that's not a good thing at all. But they shouldn't have to tippy-toe around, you being very sensitive to some of these things, okay? It's like you can't expect everyone to just give in to every demand that you have. Instead, if you have problems, go and see the proper person to be able to help you with those problems. So when you hear certain things, or when people are talking to you about certain things, you're not as easily triggered by them, because not everyone is going to be able, or shouldn't give into your every want and demand. Okay, that's just how life is. Okay, so if you have a problem, go to a therapist, uncover some of these issues and work on them so you're not triggered anymore. Okay, and I can tell you from my own standpoint, for the most part, there really isn't any sort of thing that triggers me, I would say. I've dealt with a lot of my past issues to the point where, back then it was like, yeah, you would hear certain things. Like, I remember one time, this was like the weirdest thing, like, I touched something that I had not, I think I touched it, but, it like got on my hands or something. And once it did that, I like froze for like a few seconds, and I had like this vivid memory. It's like, oh my gosh, I completely just blocked that out and just repressed that. And suddenly, when this, I touch this thing, or it touches my skin or whatever, it comes rushing back. I'm like, oh my gosh. So a lot of these things can be kind of dormant, so they can just kind of come up just like that, and they can trigger you. And it wasn't like, really a super bad memory. I mean, it was kind of like a type of memory, it's kind of like, that's not the greatest type of memory. But certainly, if you have much more negative triggers, something just like that could happen without you even knowing. Someone could say something, someone could do something, you could touch something, go somewhere, and then you were in this very negative state. Okay? It is pretty crazy how your mind does it, but it does it. So anyway, that was all. So you all take care, have a great one, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.